Are you having another one of those months where you can't seem to pay the bills? It's so easy to bury your head in the sand, to borrow money, to have a clearance sale, slap together a spreadsheet to tackle the cash flow crunch on a purely technical and financial level. But these knee-jerk reactionary measures can often make things much worse, and they can perpetuate the pressure on your bank account. Now, here's the problem. The human element cannot and should not be ignored. Emotions, mindset, self-sabotage, worry, and even fear can have this tendency to creep in and permeate every aspect of your business or your career because they're just a natural extension of you. And this is true whether you're a business owner or you are an employee of someone else's business. And if you have negative thoughts such as being terrible with money or being bad with numbers, maybe you've even got fear around not being able to pay your bills on time, or an unhealthy obsession, and this is a big one, with minimizing your tax. Now, all of these thoughts and emotions, mindsets, and bad habits are going to have a very direct and negative impact on the results that you have. And here's the thing, cash flow and working capital, those issues are by far the number one pain point for most of you, regardless of whether you're an employee or a business owner. But fixing these problems and preventing them from recurring again next month is going to take a hell of a lot more than just some spreadsheets and graphs and forecasts and budgets and things like that, right? That's financial acumen. Now, here's why. Your need for a quick hit of cash to make payroll or to cover a tax bill or whatever is pretty much the financial equivalent of a drug user who has dropped to the ground, presumably due to an overdose. Calling an ambulance, giving them CPR, sending them to a hospital, it may get this person back on their feet for a relatively short period of time, but guess what? It's a poor substitute for actually treating the underlying emotional reasons that caused the addiction in the first place, and also putting a plan in place to help the person stay clean or stay sober. Now, these chronic issues, you'll often hear me talking about them as stinking thinking, right? They're not easily treated with Band-Aid solutions. We need to dig much deeper and uncover the limiting beliefs, the bad habits, and the self-sabotage that they actually stem from. And unfortunately, this stuff is much more difficult to overcome, but it can be overcome. So if you're constantly struggling with cash-related issues, guess what? You probably have some form of chronic poverty mindset. And unless you're prepared to fix the problem from the inside out, and what I mean by that is dealing with both the financial literacy and the emotional and mindset elements, guess what? You're never going to have success because you must do both of those two things. In order to move beyond the roadblocks that keep you poor, you have to identify the underlying reasons and then address them at the source. I want to share with you guys today 5 symptoms of chronic poverty mindset. And then I want to reveal my best tips to help you banish toxic thinking about money so that you can put strategies in place to keep the cash flowing freely in and out of your bank account. So let's take a look at them each one by one. Have you ever thought, or have you ever caught yourself saying, I hate paying tax? What about statements or beliefs that money is the root of all evil or a good name is better than riches? My first symptom of chronic poverty mindset is profit, money, and tax are bad. Well, they're not. Profit, money, and tax are not inherently good, nor are they inherently bad. They're just words, and they have no meaning other than the ones that you choose to give them. Hear me out here. Money is just a piece of paper that you use to pay for things. Profit is just an accounting term that's used to describe what's left over after all of the expenses are deducted from the revenue that you generated. It's not even a real or tangible thing that you can take to the bank and deposit, right? It's an accounting term. That's it. And tax is just something that you pay the government when you've made sales and profit, right? Yes, It's an obligation and you have to pay it. But guess what? It's one that you should want to pay because it signifies that you are actually doing well. If you're an employee, it means that you have made a good salary. If you are a business owner, it means that you are making sales and that after expenses have been paid for, that you have something left, and that something is profit. It's not something that you should be avoiding. Now, here's the thing. When you attribute a negative or evil connotation to any of these words, you inadvertently set yourself up for a world of pain and struggle. Your brain is a survival focused mechanism, and it just wants to keep you out of harm's way. It's a safety mechanism. If you believe that money, profit, and tax are bad, guess what? Your brain will always try to protect you from them, which essentially means that at a very deeply subconscious level, guess what? You're going to be sabotaging yourself in order to avoid these things. Now, when you let go of the negative meanings that you've given to them, whether that be profit, money, tax, or anything related to these things, you free up yourself to attract more of them into your life, which is a very, very good thing. So I invite you, if this is something that really resonates with you, I want you to start thinking about the meaning, start writing things down. First, identify where you're at. And then you can map forward a way that you can reframe the meanings of these things. You can re-language the way that you talk to yourself about them so that you can set yourself up for success, not failure. Now, number 2 is a really good one as well. It really affects a lot of people, and I call it penny wise, pound foolish. Now, I'm going to give you guys an example. Have you ever in your life driven kilometers out of your way to buy milk or gasoline or printer cartridges or what have you because they're a few cents or a few dollars cheaper somewhere else? Now, you should be probably laughing right now. This will apply to most of you. Have you ever purchased things you don't need or bought them in bulk just because, somebody offered you a good deal to do that? Now, even though it seems like you're saving money, right? Because someone's offered you a deal, guess what? This is a very bad habit. And these bad habits invariably end up biting you in the bank account because you waste more time and money and energy than it's worth chasing these deals, right? I've seen clients literally focus all their attention on saving $100 on something. And yet they might the very next day waste $100,000 by entering into a contract to purchase something where the return on investment is really poor, or they didn't even bother asking their lawyer or their accountant to help them review the contract and the terms before they signed it, right? Now, if you are suffering from this in any way, it's going to take a lot more than just sheer willpower to break free of this because it's a bad habit. It takes at least 60 days. So the latest thinking from a neuroscientific perspective is that it takes at least 2 months, 60 days of consistently taking steps and support, perhaps even accountability for someone that you can trust to help you to break a bad habit or help you to instill a new one, right? So you're going to need to figure out what are the steps that you're going to take for the next 60 days to get out of this? And how are you going to be held accountable and by whom so that you can ensure that you start prioritizing your financial decisions and evaluating them properly? So that's something I definitely want. If you are suffering from this, I want you to write these tips down and I want you to put a plan in place of how you're going to take steps towards this starting from right now today. Now, number 3 is perhaps one of the most insidious of them all, and it's around this concept of scarcity mentality. And I want you to really focus in on this one because I think it's actually one of the scariest of all of them. I had this client and they had a reasonably successful business, and she constantly lamented about her lack of money though. So one day I arrived at her business to give her some coaching, and I noticed that she had this brand new Prada handbag on her desk. Now, I'm pretty sure she didn't steal it, right? And she was obviously able to find the money from somewhere, even though she regularly told herself and me that she never had enough money. There's no tricky math here. This happens all the time where people are constantly languaging around their lack as opposed to their abundance. If you've got scarcity mentality, what happens is you tend to sort of see life as if there's only one pie. And if somebody else even gets one sliver of that pie, that it somehow means that there's less or there's not enough left for you. Now, scarcity is really dangerous because it affects you and it unfortunately also affects everybody else that you deal with. Hear me out. Scarcity is going to mean that you're less likely to want to share, and that includes things like your profit, power, recognition, all that stuff. Plus, you're going to have a hard time being genuinely happy for the success of others. It basically focuses you on the extreme short term of every single decision that you make, and it causes you to ignore long term consequences. Scarcity is really dangerous because it directly impacts your cash flow, because it causes you to feel this undying, desperate need to use up your resources as quickly as you can, the stuff that you've got right now, so that they can't be taken away from you later in the future. Can you see how that would be dangerous? It leads you to make very impulsive and really bad decisions. Now, abundance is kind of the opposite of scarcity, isn't it? Abundance flows from this belief that there's plenty enough for everybody. And getting rid of scarcity or tackling scarcity is really as simple as just choosing to focus on abundance and gratitude for what you already have. And when you do that, it results in sharing of prestige, profit, decision making, recognition, and it really opens up your whole world to possibilities and options, alternatives, even creativity that you never even knew that you possessed. So it's really as simple as starting to focus on what you do have. For those of you that have never done it, simply writing a gratitude journal every single day to be, thankful for the stuff that you have. And those things could be your health. They could be the roof over your head, a business that supports you and your family, any number of things. It's really easy to start to unwind this insidious loop of scarcity mentality, but it's incumbent upon you to actually start actioning this stuff and putting into place some sort of tangible mechanism where you're writing down and you're constantly giving thanks for what you already have. When you are thankful for what you already have, guess what? It opens the door for more of it to flow freely to you. So let's move on to number 4. And this is a whole concept. And, I'm sure that you guys have heard this before. And it's that, either entrepreneurship or making money is hard. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking that in order to create a successful business or in order to be successful at your job, you need to work yourself to death and plow all of your cash or resources back in to your business or into the job that you're doing. Oftentimes, I see these people paying themselves very little, despite the fact that if they've got a business, that it's actually quite successful. I want to give you a case in point here. Most people, when they're running businesses, pay everybody else first, including their employees, the taxman, the bank, and all their suppliers, and they often overlook and undervalue the role that they play in their own bloody company. Now, in order to value yourself, you've got to start practicing putting funds aside for your own pay and for your own retirement, as well as paying all of these other bills and earning a profit and all that stuff that's really important to a sustainable business. It's as simple really as putting intentional systems in place. Intentional systems are really important because if you have an intentional system, and what I mean by that you're setting aside regular salary for yourself, regular time to have vacations so that you can rest and rejuvenate, it means that you're actually putting the fundamental building blocks in place to overcome this particular element of chronic poverty mindset and really create a healthy and sustainable company. And so, intentional systems are important. They can come out in other ways, not just putting money aside for your own pay and your own, savings, but also things like putting money aside to pay tax. So if you're owing GST or sales tax on an ongoing basis, you want to be putting the money aside into a separate bank account as you go, so that by the time that you get to the end of the month or the end of the quarter, whenever you're required to pay the tax, that the money is already there and that you're not scrambling because it's gone out the door to pay a whole bunch of other emergencies. So intentional systems are really important to help set you up for success because they help you shortcut the, tendency that you might have to want to spend the money on other things or to deal with emergencies and then forget that you have left yourself short. The last one that I want to talk about is a concept that I think many people are going to relate to. And I see this, in many different industries, and it affects business owners as well as it affects people who are employees. And it's a concept of not feeling worthy. It's a, self-esteem issue. Most people, when they're in business, rarely charge what they are worth. Most people in business will undervalue their contribution, what they bring to the table. And I see this amongst a lot of employees as well. People are afraid to ask for a raise. People are afraid to back themselves and go to bat for themselves. Now, whether it's due to a lack of self-worth or just maybe you're afraid that if you, put prices up or if you ask for a raise, that it's going to somehow cause the business to go under or you're going to lose sales. No matter what the excuses are, guess what? It never pays to undercharge. I want you to listen carefully to what I'm about to say. The price that you choose, right? The price that you put on your labor, the price that you put on your product or service directly impacts your margins. And your margin is a key determinant of cash flow, right? Now, there are a lot of things that I'm going to ignore in this about the way that margins can be calculated because they can easily be manipulated. There's a lot of non-cash elements, but your price is one of the key drivers to how much money you bring in the door in your business. And while it's possible and common to, have high net margins and low cash flow, it's almost impossible. It's very extremely rare to have really poor margins and low prices and have high cash flow, right? It just doesn't happen. The only way that's going to happen is if you're liquidating stuff or if you're raising money or taking on debt in your business. The money's got to come from somewhere. If it's not coming from your operations of the business, the only places it can come from are investing in financing activities. And don't forget, it's hard to get people to lend you money or invest in your company if you're unable to prove that you can manage your own cash flow wisely. So why it's really important is that you must narrow the focus of what you do down so that you can command a premium price, right? Like if you're selling a Big Mac, unfortunately, the price for a Big Mac is usually the same at the shop A on a certain street corner as it is on shop B because it's a kind of like a commodity. And I hate to use the word commodity because it's a lazy way of saying that your product or your service is undifferentiated from other people that provide it. I believe everything can be differentiated. And the case in point of that is you take a look at, a company like Nespresso. Coffee beans, they only really cost, or, if you were going to go buy them at a store, sort of $19 or so per kilogram. But somehow Nespresso has turned their delivery mechanism, the way that they deliver it in the pods, with the fancy commercials, with George Clooney advertising and all that kind of stuff, they've somehow been able to differentiate their coffee beans so that they're worth something like $132 a kilogram. So everything is capable of being differentiated. It's just that we must take time to actually create that economic value, to actually create those differentiating factors. Here's the thing. If you let other people drive your price down, then you are going to be doomed to continually deal with cash flow problems. And that's true whether you're an employee or whether you have a business. It's your job to demonstrate the value of your unique solution, the value that you bring to the table. And until you believe that you're worth it, unfortunately, no amount of financial literacy training or forecasting is going to fix these problems. These are problems that come from inside of you. And it's incumbent upon you to figure out, how are you going to establish some boundaries? How are you going to frame up what you do, the value that you bring to the table and the solutions that you provide, regardless of whether you're an employee or a business owner, so that you can command that premium price. And when you're commanding the premium price, your cash flow issues will be minimized. So here's the thing. As long as you continue to focus kind of reactively or merely focus on the technical and financial aspects of cash flow, guess what? You're pretty much going to struggle every month. I see this playing out sort of, day after day. I see the questions people are asking on social media, the questions that people are asking when they are looking for coaching and looking for assistance. If you want to put an end to cash flow drama, guess what? You must start first with strengthening your mindset, putting tools and resources, these intentional systems to help you break bad habits, to help you, create and appreciate more abundancy in your life. That stuff, in addition to becoming more skilled and to learning about the financial literacy aspects, is going to be what really saves the day, what really makes the difference. Now, what I want you guys to do today is I want you to take some time to identify which of the 5 chronic poverty mindsets is holding you back from having the business or even the job of your dreams. And maybe it's more than one. And if it is, I want you to be honest with yourself and write this stuff down. I want you to make a plan to shift or reframe that mindset or that belief to the positive. And I want you to remember to also put your hand up and ask for help if you're unsure, or maybe you just need some support or help to be held accountable to actually making this shift, right? These emotional blockers, the fears that you might have, limiting beliefs, perceptions, self-sabotage, all that stuff, they're deeply ingrained. And it's going to require more than just, sort of positive thinking or quick fixes or band-aids to overcome this stuff. But remember, they can be overcome. And you can reach out to me anytime if you have questions about this or you require some support and resources. And I promise that I will point you in the right direction. Have a great day.